I'm going to read actually just a short section here. There's a lot of steganography in Alice in Wonderland, and I think Alice in Wonderland is one of the most important esoteric pieces of work ever done. I think that that's the reason why we hear that it gets utilized in things like MK Ultra training, or it gets utilized um, in these different ways. But um, fundamentally, I think upon its release, it was an invitation to an expanse of consciousness. And I think that the people behind it, Lewis Carroll is who we know is behind it, are directly plugged in to this Golden Dawn revelation that's happening. And again, the individuals involved have very interesting connections. One of the things that I learned, and I invite everyone to watch a show that I did on Alice in Wonderland, which is in the X Series, Top 15 X Series playlist that's on this channel. And it goes in depth into Charles Dodgson's background. But the key concepts in there, the hurrier I go, the behinder I get, that's pure apotheon. And he's suggesting that there's a realm, a state that she gets into where time doesn't matter. And they are all the characters are informing her of these things. So there's a reason why that book has such an impact. And you can look at it in a number of different ways. But if you look at some of the early pictures of Dodgson when he's doing photography, he will often point to, and you have to keep in mind the whole piece about, Emma Britton and how they used her as a somnambulist. If you look at this picture, it's actually quite fascinating. I'll describe a few things that are going on here. In fact, this girl is going into a trance, and she's manifesting a ghost who is in communication with her. And then behind the ghost is someone assisting on the astral plane who is also, kind of a ghostly figure. But there's a lot of esoteric information in his photographs. So look at that one.
Oh, it's great.
Quite remarkable. So what he is kind of using as a steganography is he's suggesting, this information comes from a mediumistic source. And you see that over and over again in Alice in Wonderland. Now, there have been mathematicians who've studied Alice in Wonderland and also see various math formulas. But his familiarity with steganography also comes across. And so there's a number of unusual ciphers as well that show up in the book that spell her name and all the rest of it. But here's a couple of things I came across that I think kind of open up the Alice in Wonderland piece. By the way, that is Alice Little, and she's related directly to Samuel Little Mathers, who is the founder of the Golden Dawn. That's her a little more grown up. And that's the famous drawing of Alice, of course. Some of these interesting early versions of it, when it was called Alice in the Underground, and some of those original versions that has been on display. Very interestingly, someone put together a series of these and put it out, and people would show up and look at the original versions of it. There's been a lot of things that the actual original book of Alice in Wonderland. One of the things in the Hot Zone series I revealed is this great story about T.T. Brown that his daughter told me, which is that when he meets the man who's commanding the Caroline yacht, who's obviously very, deep and knowledgeable, and has him there off the coast of Cuba for a reason in 1930, just before great earthquake strikes. He shows him in a glass case the original version of Alice in Wonderland, and it's hermetically sealed. And T.T. Brown says, well, why do you have this like this? And he said, well, if they ever take down this yacht, Alice will survive. So there's a very interesting piece about that. What's fascinating is that guy will go to Calvin Coolidge's White House and show him, in fact, the original version of Alice. Here's a couple of things you probably didn't know about Alice. Alice Little had aspirations. Her mother had aspirations for her to marry into the upper class, and she earned the nickname Kingfisher. So, because she was always pushing her daughters to court the best of the best and meet new men to charm at parties. She should have been proud because Alice very nearly married Queen Victoria's son, Prince Leopold. He was studying as an undergraduate at Oxford Christ Church when Alice's father worked. Unfortunately, members of the royal family were not allowed to marry anyone from the middle class. This almost happened, which would have made her, a princess. And the more we look at Alice Little, it becomes very interesting, the connection that she had going forward. That story, of course, is so interesting. But when we get some of those images of her as an adult, it's very Golden Dawn, Temple Garb setups. One of the things I found in relation to this, let's see if I have it here. There's actually a book. There's actually notations about a book where Lewis Carroll is writing in the margins about how he's going to use different types of steganography in different sections. It's only one page, and I'm going to show you that here. But this is interesting. I might actually tweet this out so everyone can take a look at it. But there's so many different things I could point out about it. But the page itself basically are just notes to himself about where he's going to insert certain types of steganography and what, how the impact is going to go on the page. That is quite interesting to me because there's so much code in the way that he lays out Alice in Wonderland that, there's a huge crisscross there with that whole mystical tradition that comes up out of the Golden Dawn. And then when I see Alice kind of moving into those circles later, it seems to me that we need to understand that when he was at Oxford, he was in control of the Ashmolean library there at Oxford. That's basically the core of all the esoteric information, kind of like the Vatican Library for that at Oxford. And so we learn a great deal, I think, about Lewis Carroll and Alice in Wonderland. And I connect it directly to the Golden Dawn because of the fact that his muse, Alice Little, was in fact connected, related directly to our friend Mathers, who was chosen for this activity. And that's, again, one of those earlier chapters of Alice in Wonderland. Yes, Miss Olivia.
Trina Clark wanted to remind us that 2023 is the year of the rabbit.
Oh, hey, that's true.
So Kanka Kong says, was Lewis Carroll a member of any of the mystery schools that you know of, even though there is this link?
Well, he's part of the Psychical Research Society. Okay, so that is a huge interface with this. And he's also, what's interesting is he's noted as part of the Ghost Club. Now, the Ghost Club, primarily, it's like an occult group that just studies things publicly about in life after death and apparitions and things. However, Emma Britton had mentioned that the group that she had worked with was called the Orphic Circle, but she said later it would take on the name of the Ghost Club. So therefore, Carroll, as he would be, as a literary figure, major, who's interested in esoteric issues, would be recruited into something directly like that, the same way that she said when she was doing her medium trances, when Emma was doing her medium trances for the Orphic Circle, Charles Dickens was there, future Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli was there. And, those groups work with the highest levels of society and certainly great literary figures. So the fact that Carol would be around the Ghost Club makes perfect sense. Yeats was in the Ghost Club. So, if we just open up our minds to the idea that, that's a lot. That's actually showing a lot of your heart on your sleeve when you're part of the Golden Dawn and part of the Ghost Club and things. Then you wonder, oh, what about behind the scenes? You're really involved in the machinery. So certainly I think there's a great crossover there. Yes.
Karen Carpenter, are there other classics known to have embedded steganography?
Well, there's so many. I mean, there's fairy tales and, everything from Little Red Riding Hood to Russian fairy tales. So no, it's throughout culture. Alice in Wonderland in particular, I think, is important because it represents dimensional activity and it reveals a great deal.
Gigi says Wizard of Oz.
Oh, excellent point. That's a great one, Gigi. And think about, how deep does that go? Again, you have Alice as the heroine and Dorothy as the heroine. And, the Red Queen is certainly something to be fought against. And certainly the evil witch is something to be fought against. So you're looking indeed there at an established evil coming into contact with what? It's innocence mixed with some special ability. And, you could call it a kind of psychic ability. But in each case, the heroine overcomes the obstacle. Yes.
Esoteric 369 Wall. Daniel, any thoughts on Leo Zagami's claim that Blavatsky was a Satanist?
No, I mean, I understand all that because there's a thread of theosophy which tries to open up the whole idea of Lucifer Gnosis. So, and this is a whole conversation in itself, but, Steiner had a magazine called Lucifer Gnosis. So they view that whole Lucifer thing differently than the traditional devil Lucifer idea. Steiner calls the devil Ahriman, right? This is where he works with it, but he identifies Ahriman as separate from Lucifer, and that the Luciferian beings are a mixed thing for humanity. So at times they've taught them arts, they taught them language, but they've also been unhealthy for them at times, and they also, harvest humanity. So it's a much more mixed thing. Whereas the Ahrimanic powers are just a pure drain on humanity. So therefore, both of them, if they're confronted correctly, can add to humanity's knowledge, and it's like facing a great challenge. But this whole thing about there's always been stories about Blavatsky, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that she's not a perfect person by a long shot, but she's a remarkable adept. And so she brought forward a body of information. And as a woman and as a foreign, Russian woman in America founding theosophy, that's pretty remarkable. So, we have to think about this in an interesting way. It's too easy, I think. And I don't know where somebody like Zagami would get that. It's like he read the surface level of it, but didn't go down a few levels to Lucifer Gnosis, which doesn't read like devil worship at all. You could never get to somewhere like where Blavatsky got with, theosophy and all that impact on people if it was just, some kind of a devil worshiping thing. Like the impact of it is too benevolent. And, I even think some of the worst cases of where things have gone awry with certain people, even in the case of Crowley, it seems to me he started out trying to say, I'm finding the true light, I'm finding love, God, and all that. And that's the weirdness, which is there's a distortion that runs so deep that, we have to be very careful about placing labels on people when you get up at that level. So I would say if somebody identifies themselves as a Satanist, then that's one thing. But no, I mean, it all, what does Satan mean exactly? What exactly are you talking about? So that gets us into an interesting conversation.